sure we've got many more topics to discuss in the future, Catherine.
Yeah, we have. So this evening, everyone, I am really delighted to have Bob Eden on my show. Bob and I have connected over the last sort of year, really, from various groups that we've been both members of. And Bob, you've got a really interesting story to share with us tonight, haven't you? So what I'd really like to do is start by asking you to sort of introduce yourself to my audience, and then we'll fire away to hear your story.
Yeah, okay. It's kind of hard. I'm 68 and going great, and it's kind of hard to put the last 36 years of personal life experience and all the research I've done into depression into 1 hour. But yeah, this might just be episode one, but fortunately, over the last couple of days, I've managed to write out a roadmap of my journey. I call it the 5 stages of healing. But so where I am now, I am master and commander of my life. I take full responsibility of this life that I do create. And why am I here? Every 40 seconds, somebody dies because of depression, and they do not have to. And I am living testimony to that. For I found a way through depression, and that's something I danced with for over nearly 30 years. And so I'm here to share my story in the hope that some of the aha moments, some of the tools I've found will benefit other people. And how can I put it? Well, my life mantra at the moment is we are all Sue. We are all sovereign, unique, and equal, and everything else just flows from that. And that the universe, not that I'm being arrogant, but the universe operates under the KISS principle, which is keep it simple, sovereign, because life is supposed to be simple, and it's only the mind that complicates things. So, right, I'll just quickly read out this little The 5 Stages of Healing by Bob Eden. No, I don't want to sound like Jeremy Clarkson. That's the last person I want to. I've got an amazing sense of humour.
Good.
Catherine.
So do we. That's one good thing us Brits share, is a great sense of humour.
Well, I've faced my death too many times to take too much too seriously. And I was brought up on Spike Milligan. So.
Yes. Fantastic. That's a good standard for anyone to be brought up on. Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. The 5 stages of healing. And for me, they were stage 1, innocence, then stage 2, victimhood, stage 3, survivor, stage 4, recovery, and then the final stage, stage 5, contentment. So I'll start with stage 1. This stage began when I was born as a magical, innocent being and the world was a wondrous place. This lasted for less than 2 years when, through abuse, I moved into stage 2. Stage 2, victimhood. As a small child, I was unable to defend myself and became a victim of my violent surroundings. This stage lasted till I was about 12 or 13, and I was able to say no and to defend myself. Stage 3, survivor. And so I started maturing as a survivor, using the fight and flight behaviors I'd developed as a victim, like being perfect, being the people pleaser, believing what adults told me. This stage lasted until I was 32 years old and had my first panic attack and began my dance with depression. Although it did not feel like it then, this marked my shift into stage 4 recovery. 1984 was the beginning of my recovery. Unfortunately, I wasted about 20 years trying to think my way out of depression. I have an amazing intellect. My IQ is 150, Einstein is 160, go figure. But it didn't help solve my problems. Looking back, I call this the trap of the intellect. In 1992, I came across John Bradshaw's work on the inner child and so began healing the wounds of my childhood, deprogramming myself from codependent behavior and re-establishing my belief in me. At this time, I'd been taking various antidepressants for about 10 years, with another 10 years still to go. In 2005, when I became a ship's captain, I decided to take full response. I took that ideology of being a ship's captain, like, bugger, Paul, the buck stops with you. I took that ideology and applied it to my whole life. Yeah, so at that time, 2005, I was watching the Russell Crowe movie, Master and Commander. Hence my phrase, I am master and commander of my life. And so at that time, I will not deny the pain of depression. It's very, very real, very, very real, and soul destroying. But I thought, well, I asked myself this question, Bob, what's the longest relationship you ever had in your life? And the answer was, well, with me. So why am I listening to other people it's telling me there's something wrong with me? Let's sit and have a look at this pain. And the light bulb went off. I suddenly realized the pain I was feeling was just a natural human loving response to having to live in such a corrupt society as a wage slave. But also, I was not living my truth. I was living my programming. I was living the TV life. And so all of my life up until that time was based on falsehoods. So I went off in search of the truth. So as master and commander, I thought, what is my life's purpose? So I set my life's purpose to simply find my own truth. And how do I know what's my truth? Whatever resonates with my heart. And then the second thing, this is it felt a bit cheeky at the time, but I'm master and commander. I thought, well, as a spiritual being, how do I want to experience this life? So I set my own conscious life intention to be, I am here to have a gentle, joyful, loving, healthy, and abundant life. Now, since I put that command in place, that is precisely how my life is unfolding. For that I am here is my command to the universe, but also my address to the universe, so it knows where to deliver. So since I put that conscious life intention in place, that's precisely how my life is unfolding.
That's wonderful. And your little dog in the background is having such fun. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So how I got through the depression was I was living on my boat in Pioneer Bay. And one day I just threw all the meds away, probably to a lot of local sharks into psychotic demons. Yeah, and I went to hell and back 2 or 3 times a day for a couple of weeks, just shaking and sweating and swearing and just totally out of control. It's not the sort of healing process you wouldn't carry out in the supermarket. But so I got all those trapped feelings out, the feelings that I'd suppressed from my childhood. And I came to realize that the feelings that this is one of my little insight posters, the feelings that you swallow will one day come back and choke you. And the hardest thing I ever did was in that process, in my journey. God, I hate you, Mum. You're always beating me. I hate you. But you got to love your mum. You've only got one mum. And it was that dichotomy that was tearing my soul apart. So this is the hardest thing I ever did. I sat down and wrote a letter to Mum. Dear Mum, just telling you my story of how I felt as a child growing up in our family.
And how old were you, Bob, when you wrote that letter? Roughly.
This is 1992. So I'd be 40. Yeah, 40 years old, which is a typical age for men to wake up. I wish I'd done it earlier. But So I sat down and wrote this letter to Mum. Dear Mum, just telling you my story, and this is not about judgment. Please tell me your story. So I started off. I hated it when you hit me with a frying pan. I hated it when you dangled me by my wrist and beat me with a carpet sweeper. I hated it when you kept blaming me for the scar on your belly. And I just got it all out. And what I thought would be 1 or 2 pages ended up like being like War and Peace. You know, it was. Anyway, I got to the end and signed it. This is my story. Please tell me yours, Mum. Your loving son, Bob. And then I posted it to her back in the UK. I'm in Australia. Didn't hear anything for a while. And then Mum wrote back and said, oh, Bobby, you must think I'm the best mother in the whole world, but I was only doing my very best. And I said, Mum, this is not about blame. Please tell me your story. So eventually she wrote back. And she was born in Germany between the wars, 1924. Her dad was an alcoholic, and Mum was a control freak. There's all this, shit going on in Europe. And basically, she had an abusive childhood as well. And that's when the light bulb went off. Yes, Mum was doing her very, very best, but all she could do was dump on me what got dumped on her.
Yeah.
So by writing that letter to her, I broke the multi-generational cycle of abuse and healed the wounds of my childhood. And my healing was not complete until I could forgive my abusers.
Yeah.
So I'm walking around like somebody's taken an elephant off his shoulders, but there's still a niggle here. What's this niggle? Dad, you bastard. So I got the notepad out and wrote a similar letter to Dad, who'd already died. But Dad was a mythical creature. He was a workaholic. I never saw him. He never spent any time with me.
Mm.
So the message I got from Mum was, Mum's always beaten me, therefore she does not love me, therefore I'm unlovable and it's all my fault. And the world's a dangerous place. And then the message I got from Dad was, Dad never spends any time with me, therefore he does not love me, therefore I'm unlovable and it's all my fault. Anyway, I wrote Dad a letter. And why didn't you come to school sports days? Why didn't you go take me fishing? You know, blah, 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 blah. And then just put it in an envelope and wrote to Dad in heaven and then burnt it. And that's how I healed the wounds of my childhood. So that, along with taking full responsibility for my life, are the 2 most major things now. Because we're all Sue, but we're all equal, for me there is no argument anymore, you know. There's only difference. You know, you've got your reality, I've got my reality. I do not come here expecting agreement for all are unique. I simply expect acceptance and validation of my own reality. And so the place I'm at now is just amazing. Anyway, I just finished this little document. Yeah, bum bum dum 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 dum. So now I totally listen to my heart. I obey my body. I bet my life on trusting my intuition. And if you want to hear that story, please let me know. And that this brought me to stage 5, which is contentment. And now I am content with me. I found my truth, and I know it is my truth, or it resonates with my heart. My life now is so simple, for I live in heart space, not head space. And my life is unfolding just as I have directed it to. My life is awesome, for I created it that way. So in summary, I spent 2 years in innocence, 10 years as a victim, moving to about 20 years as a survivor, and nearly 30 years in recovery, and finally being content with me for the last 8 years. It's been a long and challenging road, but I'm glad I did the work of self-discovery. I am master and commander of my life, and I do take full responsibility for this life that I create. For me, all are Sue, sovereign, unique, and equal, and the universe operates under the KISS principle. Life is supposed to be simple, hey?
And it is, right, isn't it? And you know, that's an amazing story, Bob. And so you're a father, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you've managed to break this cycle of the abuse, because you're so right. I mean, we're hearing a lot of what's going on at the moment in the world, about the dark side and some horrible things going on. And the sad reality is many people that are abused become abusers. But you've managed to break that cycle in your family by the work that you've done yourself.
Well, what I would like to say, Catherine, in response to that, is looking globally at Western society, I cannot imagine a family where a child is growing up, where any child has had all their emotional developmental needs met, and if they haven't, they have been abused. So my comment is, we are all victims of victims, and if you don't hand it back, you pass it on. Now, the caveat to my letter to Mum was about 18 months ago. I spoke to Mum through a medium, and this medium told me stuff only Mum and I would know, so I knew she was fair dinkum. And Mum was crying her eyes out, saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, Bobby, for writing that letter, for now she is healing the wounds of her childhood in the beyond. Now, that just blew me away. That blew me away. So I've not only broken that cycle, in this existence, but I've started a chain reaction going all the way back. And yeah, it's an amazing time to be alive, isn't it?
It really is. It really is an amazing time to be alive. And, your story is so powerful, Bob, because at the moment, I mean, I was just having just before I spoke to you, I've just been having an amazing chat with Mel Kay, who I think you've listened to some of her stuff. And the problem is at the moment with everything that's going on globally, I mean, there is an absolute epidemic of mental illness in the world at the moment. And I know you've got a lot of good facts and figures on that, but this has been going on for decades, hasn't it? And the medication route just simply doesn't work, does it?
No. And I'll just go with the flow on this. I call it the big lie, and this is the age of awakening. And it's no surprise. If you want to know, underpinning my sense of contentment is the minds predicted the dawning of the age of integrity, and it began on December the 21st, 2012. And everybody said, oh, the mind's saying it's the end of the world. It's not. It was the end of an era, and it was the end of the age of power. So now, since 2012, we've got the age of integrity slowly overcoming the age of power. And where I look around the world, I can see that more integrity is coming to the forefront and is being the guiding light for humanity. And actually, I find the incidence of depression, the increase in, actually a comfort. And that may sound bizarre, because more and more people that come to that stage of pain and then come to the same realization that I did, that the pain was just a natural response to not living your truth and supporting a corrupt and evil society. The more people that come to that conclusion, the sooner we will manifest the change into creating for a community where we move from competition to cooperation, which is what we were born to do. We were born to cooperate, not compete with each other. And so while I was going through depression, I spent most of my life in research. So I've got that sort of, gnaw at the bone attitude. So I compiled a database of all the antidepressants I've taken over the 25 odd years. And I've taken them all. I'm a slow learner, but they all have one common denominator. And so it even tells you on the little leaflet in the packet. Their commonality is can cause thoughts of anxiety, panic, depression, and suicide. And, and once I'd come to that understanding, I thought, well, this is a no-brainer. This is an absolute no-brainer. They don't want cures, they want customers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if antidepressants worked, then how come suicide rates are increasing?
Yeah.
And you have a look at this increase in suicide rates globally, And in Australia, we're third in third position. America's number one. Iceland's number two, I think. Anyway, yeah, if you look at the incidence rate of suicide and the increase in sales of antidepressants, they match.
Yes.
I'm the only one getting this. You know, doesn't that tell you something? It's like, could it not be that antidepressants are killing people? And they are. And I'm tied up with lots of other groups like the CCHR, you know, Citizens Commission for Human Rights, and I'm not the first person to come to this realization, but that's why I'm desperate to get onto more platforms and just get this message out there, because I've come to the conclusion that I'm the only expert on my life. And my mind was always looking for answers, but my heart already knew. I had to silence my mind and just listen to my heart. And my heart is my only compass, and my intuition is my only guide. I don't have anybody else's answers, but I might have some of their questions, because it was the questions that I asked myself that drove me and gave me my own answers. And pharmacy, the mental health business industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And if you research, go back to, you know, the 1900s or the late 1890s and that, the dawning of psychiatry in Bedlam, at that time you were considered insane if you were an unmarried mother. Oh, you must be insane to have a child out of wedlock. And also, if you were homosexual, you were insane and thrown in the loony bin. And now, if you're homosexual and can sing a bit, you're in line for a knighthood. What's happened?
Well, it's funny to say that. I don't think people realise how recently in history this was. So one of my best friends from university, I'm 53, and one of my best friends from university, after she left university, she went to study for a physiotherapist. And in Bristol, in England, there was this old mental institution. You've got your dog running around. I've got my cats pushing everything over here. Well, when she was doing her training, she got sent to do some training in this mental institution just outside Bristol. And there were a couple of little old ladies in there who were very old, and they had spent their whole life in an asylum just because they got pregnant outside wedlock. Their whole life. And this is in UK, and this is only 20 years ago that they were still locked up. They died in there. And I don't think people have got any idea just how horrendous this is. But a few of the things you said there, Bob, are so important. So at the moment, we do have a mental health crisis on our hands, and it's getting younger and younger and younger. I found it particularly interesting that you were saying a lot of these questions and you're moving into the next stage happen when you're on your ship. Do you think that connection with nature helped that process?
Well, for me, another one of my bumper stickers is, for me, science is the sickness and nature is the cure.
I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah, and my dad committed himself when I was about 6 to Fairmar Hospital in Wallingford.
Yeah.
In the UK. And I went to see him a couple of years later, and he got ECT, and, you know, and I went to see him when I was about 8, and he was totally institutionalized. And that poor bugger didn't need ECT. He just needed a holiday.
Yeah.
That's all he needed. But he was so locked into his program about bringing home the bacon. You know, sometimes he'd work for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, building his building firm with his brother, who screwed him, by the way. Families are good like that, aren't they? Yeah, so he just needed a holiday. And the reason why this depression thing is dropping lower and lower and lower, I relate it to the less freedoms in our society that we have to think for ourselves and live the life we want to. Because since the 50s, you know, there's been more encroachment on our freedom, and it's like, you know, we're squashing humanity into a smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller box. And so that impact is going down, you know, down through our life cycle.
And you
You
know
know, when
what? I mean, you know, I work with animals, and I've seen such a parallel because there's so many animal behavior issues, but we as humans completely encroach on animals' freedoms and don't allow them to be who they need to be. And I'm sitting there, and all the while we've been talking, I've been watching your dog, and I know both you and your lovely little dog have had a very difficult week because you've lost your other dog this week. But he is entertaining himself and pure joy, and you're sitting there talking and letting him be. But most animals are so restricted and so controlled by their humans for the best will. You know, the humans think they're doing the best thing. But similarly, what we've done with our children, I was lucky enough to grow up in an age where we didn't have mobile phones, where we were sent off at breakfast time. We went off in the woods. We were lucky enough to have dogs. We could take the dogs with us, and we were told to come back before dark. And we did.
yeah,
And we had the most amazing time, but because we had a lot of freedom to go off and be in nature, or be, you know, even my friends who lived in cities still had a lot of freedom. But the current children now, I mean, I'm a parent and I will put my hand up to be 100% guilty of this, is we're in such a fear society. We're so scared to let our children out of our sight that they don't have a chance to express themselves. So, you know, it's a very important point you've just raised there.
well, when I was 5, I lived. Dad bought this mansion right next to RAF Greenham Common Air Base. It was a 24-room mansion called Foxhold House, which is now owned by the National Trust. And and because of the violence in our house, as soon as I'd had breakfast, I was off into the woods,
Yeah.
building tree dens, and with my dog Skipper, you know, finding foxholes and badger trails and picking blackberries from the hedgerows, and I'd come back, you know, just in time for my next meal. And that's how, because if I got in range of mum, I was going to get hit, you know, whether I'd been good or bad, which was a real mind screw. You know, I won't say the F word. I do have still have some manners left, but
Don't worry, I've got
yeah.
Tourette's, so it's fine.
and and with all my dogs, the only commands I have are stay and alley up, which means come here. Alley up. That's the only two, you know. And I love, in our relationship, it's them that are teaching me about how to live in the now,
Oh, yes.
not me trying to teach them how to live in the matrix, the magazine world. Because if I ever drift out of heart space, you know, and my mind gets busy, I'll just stop and look at them. You know,
We're
it's
so
eat,
lucky,
sleep,
aren't we?
drink, pee, poo, or play. And if there's nothing interesting going on, take a nap.
You know, we are so lucky. Anyone who's lucky enough to have animals in their lives, they're such a gift. So can you talk me through? So you've spoken a lot, which I'm 100% in alignment in, about how you've learned to be more in your heart space rather than your head. So for people that aren't familiar with that, because obviously in the Western culture, we spend our whole life up here instead of in our heart space. Now, can you share any tools or techniques, Bob, that can really someone can start doing themselves to help practicing this?
Yeah. The first thing I'd like to say is um, I've shared my story on over 200 radio shows and many interviews like this. And I'll send you a link. But if anybody wants to find more detail in video format, just do a search on the gift of depression, Bob Eden. And I recently did an interview, an in-depth interview with Tom Barnett. And that one goes into a lot of detail. And if anybody wants to friend me on face, can I borrow your teeth? Friend me on Facebook. I've written my story out, and it's part of a book that I'm writing called The Gift of Depression, my little scrapbook. So I'll gladly send that to them free of charge. And also, if they just want to chat with me, because I worked as a counsellor, and I found that if you, this is the next best thing to being in the room with you.
Yeah.
You know, that's the best space, eyeball to eyeball. You know, we can feel each other's energy.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. And but going back to your question, when I was working for ESSO in the UK in research, my mind was like a tree full of chattering monkeys. And because of my amazing intellect, although I never went to university, it's always been like a sponge. So in this research environment, I was just absorbing it all. But when I started my spiritual journey, I couldn't hear my mind. And it was about 1995, 96 in Australia, working in automotive research. I went, still with depression ruling the roost. I went to my boss one day and said, Chris, I fear if I lose this job, I'll die, so I quit. I'd just been playing at Araluen Festival in the southwest, and I bought a combi, love and peace, man. And I put a pop top on it, got it back home, and set it up for the traveling life. And I had a 3-garage Spanish hacienda type house full of crap, so many projects and blah, blah. So whatever wouldn't fit in the combi, I either sold or gave away. And the first thing that wouldn't fit was the television, the TV. So number one, get rid of the television.
Yeah.
Start doing your own research. And then I set off around Australia, and it's like 40 days, 40 nights, that sort of feeling. But I had Shakti Gawain's book with me on creative visualization. So this is the tool that I developed to silence my mind. And I work in pictures, movies in here, And so I'm running down this underground tunnel with the fluorescent lights, a bit like a James Bond movie, Dun, 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 dun. You're even getting sound effects here.
I visualise Daniel Craig a lot in my dreams, I must say.
And so I get to the end of the tunnel, and there's this big glass sliding doors. And as I approach them, they slide open. And I can hear the dark satanic hum of the hard drives of my mind. But over on the right-hand side, there's a big red switch. So I roll over there, and above the big red switch, somebody had posted a government health warning. Beware, thinking can seriously damage your well-being. I thought, good on you, mate. So I just grabbed the switch and went kerclunk. And then I could hear the hard drive spinning down. And I kept playing that video over and over again until this little phrase popped up. My mind is just a tool that I use when I choose, for I am so much more than my mind. So that's what came out of, and now I treat my mind like I treat, my little puppy dogs.
Yeah.
I say, here, mind.
Yeah.
Off you go, do some research on solar luminescence and come back and report to me. So off my mind goes, wagging its little tail because it's had some attention from the master, and it comes back and reports to me. I say, thank you very much, mind. I'll pat it on the head. Here's a treat. Back in your basket. I'll take you for another run tomorrow. So now my mind is just another tool in my toolbox, and I'm becoming known as the spiritual mechanic. So, and that fits with me. Yeah, because if I look at all the tools, like my sense of knowing, within the silence of my heart, I found a place I call my knowing. And my knowing has no words, but it's through that place that I found my connection to source, but also connection to a place I called the universal library of all that there is to know. And I've only just recently found out that people know it as the Akashic Records.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm getting my little downloads from. And it's a connection that's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. But none of this happened or began to happen until I moved out of my mind and just live in my body. And now my life is simple. When my body is tired, we sleep. And when my body is awake, we play. I am aware of all the pain and suffering and corruption that's going on in our society. But for me, that's just, it's the beast. The beast is dying. And how I run my life is whatever is not nurturing for me, I simply call the beast. And I no longer feed the beast. Why would you? You know, where attention goes, energy flows, and that is working for me.
And that
so
is.
I give my... Sorry, I'll shut up.
Well, I was just going to say, no, that's just so amazing. It's absolutely amazing, and it's amazing that you've learned that through life experience. So the thing that gets asked to me a lot, and people, particularly in the Western world, are very caught in this cycle of money. So how have you found that approach works for you in terms of manifesting enough for you to support your lifestyle?
Well, I'm retired now. And I've never been busier in my life. I don't know how I ever found time for a proper grown-up job. But I've probably got about $100 in the bank, but I'm the richest bloke I know because I'm content with me. And for me, this is another one of my bumper stickers. If you want to have an abundant life, live abundantly. I feel abundant about my life. And because I do, so it is.
Wonderful.
But I create that feeling that manifests my life experience. And also, I experience this life through my senses. You know, I feel the warmth of the sun on my skin. I feel the breeze wafting my long golden hair. Well, it used to be. I smell the sweet tang of the rotting mangoes under the tree. I feel the crispy coolness of the grass beneath my feet. So I experience this life through my senses, not through my thinkings. And so Descartes was wrong. He's totally wrong. I feel, therefore I am.
Yeah.
And what I've come to know is that for me, thinking is the language of the mind, but feeling is the language of the soul. It's the language of the heart. And it's feelings are healings. That's what healed me. And that's why so many men in Western society are in such pain, because for centuries they've been denied access to their most powerful healing tool, which is their feelings, getting in touch with their feelings, expressing their feelings in the moment when appropriate, you know? And that's why so many males are suicidal, you know?
It's an absolute epidemic, isn't it? Because it's such a taboo subject, and you know, with modern life and the pressures of the false social media and the false projection that people express to the world, there's a huge feeling of inadequacy and a lack of joy in most people's life because the worry overrides everything. And I was having a conversation with an amazing friend today. And I've always been very scientific and very academic, and I love learning. I mean, I just love learning from everything, from nature, from animals, from research, you name it. But it's interesting that the more I've tuned in and tapped into my intuition, and I'm lucky enough to live in a wonderful place in nature. I've always been surrounded by animals, so I've got the best teachers out there. But the more I tap into my intuition, the more I've lost the ability to express myself in what we would call the traditional way of, you know, so I'm constantly being asked by all my scientific friends, where's the scientific reference for this? Where's that? But once you tap into that innate knowing, you don't need that. You don't need that external verification, do you? And that is the ultimate survival skill.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm getting to the stage now where if I want to share something, words don't cut it anymore. I can't find the words because what I'm trying to share is coming from my knowing, you know. And I love the Bible. It's a great great work of fiction and myth, but there's some good pointers in there. Um, like Adam and Eve got kicked out of the Garden of Eden. Well, not my garden. I can't even. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Adam and Eve got kicked out of the Garden of Eden for eating from the tree of knowledge. Now, what that says to me is the pursuit of knowledge is the original sin.
Yeah.
Which is why I say I prefer knowing to knowledge. Now, I exercise my mind in the pursuit of knowledge because it needs that. It needs that exercise. And it's voracious. It's got a voracious appetite. But I'm learning so much, just through what the Mayans called the birth of global consciousness, which was, and they predicted this, they called it the birth of global consciousness. We know it as the internet. Yeah, and if the internet isn't the birth of global consciousness, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
And it's through this platform that we can share face to face, eyeball to eyeball. And, communication is key here, but communication from the heart. Now, I'm admin on a couple of sort of lovely healing groups, all about heart space. And if somebody posts something, if it's not uplifting, if it's about COVID or politics, it just doesn't get approved, And there's, as Charlie Ward says, this is an amazing time to be alive. Sit back and watch the show. For me, everything is unfolding perfectly because I'm master and commander of my life. I create it. And I know whatever is coming in the future will be in alignment with my conscious life intention. So there's no fear there. There's no fear.
So what would your message be? Because there's so many people living in a state of fear now that are being coerced into making decisions that might not resonate with them at a soul level because they're, we all know you do not make good decisions when you're in a state of fear. So what would one of your messages be to those people, Bob?
Yeah, as I say, I could never give advice. All that's done for me, all that I've done in simple terms, and this started in 1969, actually, my first realization. I was 17. Like Jack Frisco said, I said to my two mates, Rod and Dave, all this crap's got to stop. We've got to stop worshipping science and technology and get back to community. And I said that in 1969, but then got hooked into the matrix for the next 40 odd years. So all I've done is follow my heart. I am the only expert on my life. And if anybody's giving you advice, it's only because they want you to live your life their way. Sorry, mate, that ain't going to happen. Unsolicited advice is abuse and the power of no. If you're going to behave like that, I'm out of here. Or no, when you do that, this is how I feel. In future, could you do so and so? So I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm just asking for what I want because meeting my needs is my job. And as I am unique, I'm the only one in the whole of creation that can ever know what my needs are. Oh, I know what you need to do, mate. Well, that's a load of bollocks. Oh, sorry.
But you've reached, Bob, in fairness, you've taken a lot of years to get to this stage where you understand what your needs are. There's a lot of people living at the moment that are far earlier on in the journey to you. So, what about where they should start? What's their starting point to them to start to listen to their needs and their heart?
It takes a leap of faith. For me, it took a leap of faith. I suddenly realized when I was about 35, 36, probably earlier, that everything I'd been told, everything I held as truth, everything I held as sacred was a lie. And I was so angry when I came to that realization. But I had to go through the 5 stages of grieving. And anybody can look that up. I had to go through, and that's sort of when I started trying to find my own truth.
Mm.
Now, in my life, I've had many jobs, many different roles, but I've never had a boss.
Mm.
You know, for me, this is a position of attitude. I've had employers that have employed me
My
to
cats
use.
are my boss. Cats are
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
boss.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
But the employers have employed me to share my sweat equity, my skills, knowledge, and ability for a monetary return. So I've never had a boss, and that's upset some people who thought they were my boss because I nail them. Even here, the local MP crosses the street if he sees me coming because I'll just nail him to the wall. You know, why aren't you doing your job? Why aren't you representing my will to Parliament?
My cat's
Why are
set
you?
her tail on. Sorry, Bob. My cat's just about to set her tail on sight with my insect stick. I just need to move it. So you are quite confident then. So in terms of not giving advice, but you are quite confident in terms of asserting your opinion to people that are in a public position.
Yeah, because they're accountable to the people.
Yeah, exactly. Great.
But we have a pseudo government.
Mm.
But I don't want to get into politics because politics is politics. For
Mm.
me, there is no place for politics in good governance because good governance is just about administration. It's administering the assets and resources of the country to the best advantage of the people that live there. That's
Yeah.
all that good governance is about. So there's no room for politics in government, and nobody in government should be in business
Mm.
because it's an obvious conflict of interest.
Mm.
But I love getting back to spirituality. I love this one. Religion was for those folks that are afraid of going to hell, and spirituality is for those folks that have already been there. So my biggest fear, when I had my panic attack, my biggest fear was the power of the feelings that I was having. They were overwhelming. They were overwhelming. And so the only benefit for the antidepressants at that time was they were allowed me to, medicate the power of those feelings. But now on the other side, I realize that it is that level of power of my feelings that is a measure of my own power. That is how powerful I am. So it's nothing to be afraid of. It's something, to embrace, to hold up and show the world. This is how powerful I am. Don't mess with me.
What do you think it's fair to say? Because there'll be people listening to this that are at the stage of their life where they are on antidepressants. And sometimes that's great. It's a learning stage for where you need to be. It's a tool to get you to the next stage of the evolution. Because I'm a strong believer that we're all exactly where we're meant to be on our own individual life's journey. And you've been through all these stages that you've articulated so beautifully tonight and reached a stage of real contentment. And I don't want anyone to sort of be feeling any guilt or anxiety about what stage they're at, because every stage we're at in our life has got a purpose, hasn't it?
Yeah. And I'd like to pick up on that. There's a little phrase there. You don't want anybody else to feel. And one of the realizations that I came to was that I'm just sharing my truth.
Mm.
If you have a response to that, your feelings are your responsibility. I'm not responsible for your feelings. And this whole political correctness thing is tied in with codependent behavior. And for me, political correctness is the epitome of codependent behavior, but also the antithesis of free speech. Because so many people are going around saying, oh, I can't speak my truth because it's going to upset someone. Well, bugger it. If you're not going to go and speak your truth, how can you live it? So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
You've got to get comfortable with speaking your truth because it's unassailable. Nobody can deny it. It is your truth. It is your jewel.
Yeah. And I think, when I grew up, we had what I would call good, healthy debates in the family. Some might call them arguments, but I prefer the good, healthy debates description. But it's so important. It's so important for everyone to have the opportunity to express themselves, and for each of us to accept everyone else's uniqueness, because just as you said, this is your truth. This is absolutely just your truth, and no one can take that away from you. But it's quite sad to me to see. I get so many people contacting me each day to say that they haven't got the courage to speak what they're really feeling. And it's really sad. It's really, really sad that they're so suppressed that they don't feel that they can be honest at all with who they are and what they're feeling.
Well, I've come to realise, especially after working as a counsellor, that everybody's on their hero's journey. Yeah? I cannot wake anybody up. That's not my job. That's their job. The best thing that I can do that doesn't involve any ego, the best thing that I can do is just to simply let my own light shine.
Mm.
And that shining light attracts people, and they start asking questions, and then a dialogue begins. And as more people find their own light and shine it, and so we illuminate the whole of the world. And I see everybody holds a piece of it. I see creation as a great big jigsaw puzzle, and everybody holds one piece of the jigsaw puzzle, and most of them are just the dirty brown cardboard at the moment. But the more you heal yourself, the more you are coloring in your own piece of the jigsaw. And when you place it on the table and more people place theirs on the table, the bigger picture becomes clearer and clearer for us all.
Yeah,
Wow.
I love getting older. A lot of people talk about, not wanting to age. I love it because there comes a freedom through all the lessons that you've learned in life. And, it's all about the journey, isn't it? I mean, we hear this, it's such a cliche, but it's the journey, not the destination. If we knew what we knew now when we were 20 years old, where's the fun in that? We want to, you've got to live through experience, and you live and learn through experience. And that's the joy of living in this human suit we're in. Though I quite like to be in a cat suit next time.
Yeah. Well, every step I've taken, however painful, and I've faced my death probably about a dozen times, and, we can share that at a later date. But every step I've ever taken, however painful, has brought me here to contentment. I had to face my demons to turn them into angels. Yeah. And do you want to talk about MMS for a while?
I'd love a quick thing, because it's a question I get a lot about. And, as you know, I'm very, very into natural remedies and people empowering themselves with a variety of tools to take control of their health. And you've had a couple of things, but have you had personal experience of using MMS?
Yeah, and so was Donald Trump.
Exactly.
When he said, let them drink bleach.
Now we're talking about what's called miracle mineral supplement. And I'm just going to say at this stage, anyone who's got this far, please join my BitChute channel, because I'm on my final warning on YouTube. And as soon as I mention anything like MMS, I'll get banned. But he has, and he got mocked and everything. But talk me through your experience, Bob.
Okay, I first came across Jim Humble's work in about 2004. I went into hospital here for some surgery and came out with a lovely gift, golden staph. And it's a killer, and current antibiotics couldn't go anywhere near it. And where I was living was a pretty aware community. And so we're talking about MMS. So I did some research and then downloaded the information, and just about everything that Jim's produced in video format, because it's all been wiped.
Yeah.
I downloaded years ago. I've got it stored away in several safe locations. I'm not stupid, but so yeah. And in those days, you had to have 1 drop of sodium chloride to 5 drops of activator, and then the way he explains to use it is you increase the strength of the dose until it is too nauseous for you. So once you mix it up and add some water, it does smell like a swimming pool.
Yeah, so I've taken
it does,
recently.
it does gag.
Yeah.
But with his work with Andreas Klecker, they now produce chlorine dioxide, which doesn't have that smell. But also you can take it in capsule form. You can take it as an enema. I just, I wasn't going to go that route. So I just used it, I just drank it. And it cured my staph in a couple of weeks. But I could see that because, I've got all this yellow muck on my belly, this horrible sort of wound. But I could see it almost from the beginning that it was having an effect. And then looking at all of Jim's testimonials from people, and it's, even people with terminal cancer, people whose the medical system says, no, we can't do it. It's all over Red Rover. They've gone to MMS and it's worked for them.
Yeah.
But it's had so much ridicule by the FDA and the lamestream media. And, but it's like the bigger the truth, the bigger the denial. Isn't it? It's worked for me. I've always got some in my medicine cupboard.
Same here.
Yeah. And using topically, for stings or.
Mm-hmm.
And while we're talking natural remedies, and if anybody wants to talk with me about MMS, I could go on longer, but 2005 was a pivotal year. Working on boats, you get used to not wearing shoes. Every year up until about 2005, I'd get every bug that was going around. Flu, mad cow disease, whatever was going around, I used to cop a flogging, until it was about 2005, maybe later. I decided to go completely barefoot. I have not had a sniffle since, or an injection. I haven't used any pharmaceuticals for the last 8 years. And when you think about pharmaceuticals, they are a petrochemical.
Yeah.
So they're not natural. They're designed by the arrogant scientists to mimic what they think is the essential ingredient in a natural plant.
Exactly.
But what they can't mimic is all the other compounds in that plant, but also the energy of that plant, because it's grown out of the ground, grown out of earth. So it's soulless, it's got no energy. And it's only one component of probably about 6 million components in the natural remedy.
Completely, Bob. And when you were talking about the MMS, I mean, I'm a herbalist, but I do something called zoopharmacognosis, which is self-medicating and using all 100% natural substances. And the beauty I love of taking MMS in its original form of sort of adding it to water. And as you said, you gradually increase the dose until it makes you feel nauseous. Is what makes you feel nauseous and the right dose for you would be completely different for me, because not only have we got different conditions we're looking to rebalance, but also we've got different inherited strengths and weaknesses, etc. So the body, when we learn to tune in, that what we were talking about earlier about tuning into your heart and soul and intuition, when we also do that when we're self-medicating, you never get it wrong. But if someone tells you to take a certain dose, the right dose for you could be completely wrong for me. One man's medicine is another man's poison. And this is where we go so wrong, because we're prepared to take someone else's opinion about what we should take over what our own bodies are telling us is right for us.
Yeah, the body knows. All you got to do is listen. Your body knows. You've just got to listen. And it's that simple.
Yeah.
The only time my life gets complicated is if my mind has slipped back in the driving seat.
Yeah.
So I just reach in, grab it by the scruff of the neck, throw it in the trunk, and put my heart back in the driving seat, and life is simple again.
My cats always do this. It's hysterical. They always want to join in. This is my big pumpkin. There's a common theme here. I've got a lot of black cats, which makes me a proper witch. Yeah, so that's absolutely fantastic. Well, this has been so useful, Bob. I'm so sorry it took so long to connect, but there's always divine timing, and I believe this is exactly the right time. There's so much more I'd love to speak to you about. So if you're happy, I'd love to sort of reconnect another time and follow up on some of this. And
Yeah, I would love that.
yeah, we're going to put all of Bob's details below the video. So Bob, please send me all the details that I can put for people so they know how to connect to you. And what an example, what an absolute example. So thank you so much for your time tonight.
What I would like to say, Catherine, is I'm just a simple bloke. And if I can do it, anyone can. So thank you so much for sharing your sweat equity, your time. It's been an absolute joy, Catherine. And
It really has.
Look forward to our next conversation.
Certainly will, Bob. Thank you. You take care. Lots of love to your lovely little dog as well. Bye.